The conflict that erupted on February 28, 2026, will be remembered as one of the most explosive and consequential chapters in modern Middle Eastern history. What began as a high-stakes military operation by the United States and Israel against Iranian strategic targets quickly escalated into a titanic confrontation, drawing in the Islamic Republic's Revolutionary Guard Corps and unleashing a storm of retaliation across the region. At the center of this seismic shift was the reported killing of Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, a development that ignited fury within Tehran's highest ranks and triggered an unprecedented series of attacks on U.S. military installations across the Middle East. As the sun rose over ancient deserts and modern cities alike, the world suddenly found itself on edge, staring down the specter of a far broader war. From the outset, news that Iran's supreme leader had been killed in a combined U.S.-Israel operation sent shockwaves through capitals and command centers, not just in Washington and Jerusalem, but from Riyadh to Amman, from Doha to Abu Dhabi. Iran's state media later confirmed that Ayatollah Khamenei had indeed been killed in the strikes, announcing days of mourning and warning that the nation's response would be decisive and without leniency. In the hours that followed, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a chilling statement, declaring that it had launched what it described as its most ferocious offensive against U.S. military installations across the Middle East. The IRGC claimed strikes on up to 27 American bases, in what Tehran described as retribution for the death of Khamenei and the attacks on Iranian territory. This claim immediately lit up international newswires and social media, sparking both fear and disbelief as the world tried to grasp the scale being asserted by the IRGC leadership. Before we go further into how these dramatic events unfolded and examine the confirmed retaliation strikes alongside the broader regional escalation, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These are the moments that rewrite global alliances and redraw the borders of war and peace, and you won't want to miss any updates as this crisis continues to unfold in real time. Iran's response did not come in whispers or measured diplomatic language. Missiles and armed drones were launched in rapid succession, flying across borders and targeting sites identified as American or Allied bases, as well as military facilities tied to Israel's defense network. According to reports, Iranian forces struck U.S. military sites located in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, and other Gulf states that host American troops. The IRGC described the assault as punishment for foreign aggression and an assertion that American and Israeli assets in the region had become legitimate targets. Among the most dramatic of these confirmed strikes was the attack on the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. Videos and witness accounts from the capital, Manama, showed anti-aircraft defenses lighting up the sky as explosions echoed and smoke rose near the Naval Command Center. The Fifth Fleet, responsible for overseeing U.S. naval operations across the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and beyond, instantly became a symbol of how far the conflict had spread from Iranian soil to the heart of the U.S. regional military footprint. Not far behind, missile and drone strikes were reported at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, one of America's most significant air hubs in the Middle East. This sprawling facility, hosting U.S. Air Force units and strategic aircraft, was thrust into danger as air defenses engaged incoming threats aimed at disrupting coalition operations and sending a message of retribution. In Kuwait, Ali al-Salem Air Base faced its own barrage, with radar systems tracking Iranian missiles before triggering defensive intercepts. Although reports indicated that many projectiles were intercepted, the act of targeting such strategic installations underscored Iran's willingness to strike deep into territory long considered secure. Across the Gulf, Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates was also reported under threat, as air defense batteries lit up the skies to protect installations hosting American and Allied aircraft. These concerted operations, spanning several countries and involving multiple waves of weapons, marked an escalation few had anticipated just days earlier. While these bases stand out as confirmed major targets of Iranian retaliation, the broader picture painted by the attacks was one of near-simultaneous, multi-directional strikes. Reports circulated that missiles and drones had been fired toward locations in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Jordan, raising fears that the conflict could expand beyond an Iran-US standoff and pull additional regional powers into the vortex. Alongside military targets, civilian areas were not immune. Explosions were reported in cities across the region, with defense systems in several Gulf capitals activated to intercept incoming threats. The emotional impact on local populations was immediate. Sirens blared, families sought shelter, and the normal rhythms of life were shattered as the reality of war bore down. For Iranians at home, the news of their supreme leader's death mingled with the surge of retaliation like a double wave of shock and resolve. State media portrayed Khamenei as a martyr and a symbol of steadfast resistance against Western and Israeli aggression, while the IRGC framed military strikes as a sacred duty to defend the revolution and punish those who dared violate Iranian sovereignty. Yet, even amid fierce rhetoric and massive explosions, not all claims could immediately be verified. The IRGC's assertion of attacks on 27 U.S. bases represented the group's portrayal of the scale of its offensive, but independent analysis has confirmed only several key bases as targeted. Still, the psychological impact of that claim alone sent shockwaves through world capitals and strategic markets alike. In Washington, alarm bells rang as intelligence and military officials scrambled to assess evolving circumstances. President Donald Trump and his national security team, already under intense pressure following their decision to strike Iran, confronted a broadening confrontation that threatened to engulf not just parts of the Middle East, but the global geopolitical order. Emergency briefings, satellite feeds, and rapid situation reports poured into the Situation Room as analysts tracked missile flights, base defenses, and diplomatic cables, each minute potentially altering the course of history across the Atlantic and around the globe. The response was tense and mixed. Some leaders supported the U.S. action against Iran, citing long-standing concerns over Tehran's missile and nuclear ambitions, while others warned that the conflict had spiraled into something far darker than anticipated. Condemnations and calls for restraint echoed from Europe and Asia, even as defense pacts and regional alliances were tested by the sheer scale of confrontation. Saudi Arabia, once cautious about allowing its airspace to be used for attacks, publicly condemned Iran's strikes on Gulf territory, declaring its readiness to support allied states and warning that continued aggression would carry grave consequences. Its crown prince reached out to allied governments to coordinate defenses and solidarity in the face of a crisis touching multiple capitals. Meanwhile, smaller nations, some hosting U.S. troops and others merely caught in the crossfire, faced agonizing calculations. Citizens grappled with travel disruptions, flight cancellations, economic uncertainty, and the looming threat of further missile activity overhead. Airlines suspended flights over conflict zones, and global markets reacted nervously to the potential destabilization in oil-producing regions. Back in Iran, the narrative was framed as an existential struggle. Foreign powers had dared to violate the sanctity of the nation, and the Revolutionary Guard insisted that any continuation of external military pressure would invite continued counterattacks. These declarations resonated through fiber optics, radio waves, and television screens, stirring both nationalist fervor and international dread. For families of American soldiers stationed at targeted bases, tension was palpable. While official reports indicated many attacks were intercepted, the risk of injury remained real. Correspondence between troops and loved ones carried undertones of anxiety, exacerbated by the knowledge that the conflict had expanded beyond rhetoric into kinetic exchanges of missiles and defense systems. Iran insisted its retaliation was calculated, signaling that any future aggression would be met with responses challenging the assumption of safe military bases anywhere in the region. Decades of perceived oppression and external intervention, Tehran argued, left no option but to defend sovereignty with all available force. Global fear of war grew as experts debated long-term implications. Analysts warned that without swift diplomacy, the region faced the risk of protracted conflict drawing in additional actors from outside the Middle East, reshaping alliances and influencing global security far beyond today. Nations dependent on Middle Eastern energy exports expressed concern about supply disruptions, while defense contractors and markets closely watched for signs of sustained instability. Even amid the turmoil, efforts at mediation surfaced. Voices urging negotiation rather than escalation gained traction in international forums, with calls for ceasefires and diplomatic engagement rising. But ongoing missile barrages, combat rhetoric, and stress on populations made any swift path to peace appear distant. As night fell over Gulf deserts and cities rattled by sirens, the world held its breath. The attacks following Khamenei's death unleashed a chain reaction unlike any seen in recent memory. A dance of missiles and defense systems blurring the line between retaliation and escalation, between targeted military engagement and the specter of far-reaching conflict. For now, the Middle East remains a tinderbox, a flame of uncertainty and human emotion caught between ancient history and contemporary warfare. Each side believes it is justified. Each parent fears for their child. Each nation watches closely, hoping wisdom might temper the fury commanding the battlefield. The events following Khamenei's death are more than strategic maneuvers or military strikes. They are a stark reminder of how fragile peace becomes once the instruments of war are unleashed. The claimed attacks on 27 bases, real or partially unverified, have forever altered perceptions of military engagement in the region. What happens next will be shaped by decisions made in command rooms, negotiations whispered in shadowed corridors, and the courage of people everywhere facing an uncertain tomorrow. As this crisis continues to unfold in real time, stay tuned to this channel for the latest updates. Hit that like button and subscribe because the world's future is being written right now.